Good morning, Alexis. How you doing?
Good morning, Stefano. I'm excited because just now you were saying this was going to be the most dangerous recording we've ever made.
Told you not to say that, but no, 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 no. I sent you. This is not morning for me. It's morning for you, but I was spending like say the whole day trying to make a simple thing like setting up a cloud instance. I'm not going to say the cloud provider because I think that the same story is the same for all of them. It's like all the time. If you want to try to set up something that is kind of secure, what I mean, like a secure, say, shut down all the services not needed, close all the ports, close everything. It seems that like this simple requirement that is every time you do something, you can do something like that. It is something that you all need to massage. All you need to create this, to create that, to create, to remember, to understand. And I don't want to say that having a basic understanding of networking is really not important, but every time that I say like magic number in IP address, something like that, I always thinking to clean code. Just why in the domain of code,
So it's funny that you mention
someone
this because I didn't even realize this, but I actually was responding to a tweet about this very same topic uh 15 minutes before we started talking, where someone was saying, "Hey, I've got all these uh projects. I don't know if they were like vibe coded projects or downloaded web apps on my system. They all have different port numbers. They all want the same port number. How do I deal with it? Like, what's the solution?" And I've got my own solution, but I agree it's hard. And I also agree that like setting up a host on the public internet is still maybe I'm doing it wrong, but it's still very scary. And it feels a little complicated.
it,
And
it, it is scary, and it's correct to be scary because having a machine exposed to the public, especially now that can everybody can like setting up an
yeah,
agent.
mythos is out there trying to like
Yeah, yeah,
trying to
this is
hack your
wild.
stuff.
And not only Midos, even all the other friends of Midos. It's actually important to have an machine, the ability to properly set up a machine and to expose to the public. But let me come back to the idea that I was trying to point down because this is a, a feeling that I'm not only the one having this kind of feeling. I'm pretty sure there was a tweet from maybe a year ago, something like from Karpati himself, that said, I vibe coded an application in a couple of days, and it took me like a 3, 4, 5 days to be able to publish it properly in a secure way. And again, coming back to the idea that I was saying that in software, we have practices that says avoid magic numbers, try to package stuff into high level function and define your own little DSL that can lead you to where you control what is happening. And let me put really rude like this is like when I'm dealing with like cloud provider, I have the feeling that I'm manipulating assembly code. It's the assembly code of
Mm,
the network.
yeah, that's a good way to put
It
it.
seems that you need to know the assembly code of the network. Say, I don't want to have no idea about this. I just want to say, please set it up the most secure machine and have the best engineer to say this is the most secure machine with only this and this thing open. And it's to me, it triggers the same kind of idea that I have a C program and I have a
Yeah.
compiler that creates the machine code. And I want like a compiler that
No,
creates
it feels
cloud
exactly the
code.
same. So I remember, we used to work together at Topology, and there we used AWS for a lot of services. And as I started exploring the choices between building the core backend infrastructure of the startup on AWS versus just using AWS for uh, cloud instances and then building
Yeah.
all the logic like within the instances, it did not seem like one was easier than the other, right? In theory, the high level service provides you like high level, so you think it's going to spare you from details. But actually, I think the situation is more like either you're going to become an expert in AWS's product surfaces, and that kind of means becoming an expert in AWS's like web interface, or you're going to become an expert in Unix. Because if you do it all like within the instance, you're going to be solving the same problems, but at the level of the operating system and like Unix services that have been around for like, I don't know, 5 or 20 years, or you're going to do it at the AWS level. And if I have to specialize in one of those things, like I'd rather understand Unix than understand AWS. And I had this experience recently. I got a bunch of, not to throw AWS under the bus, I love you, all you guys at AWS. Um, but it takes a while. It takes a while to set stuff up because it's very complicated.
And you need to usually get certification. And when you got that certification, the same kind of ideas map in a different way with a different procedure with like GCP or Azure,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's really like to me the same thing to say, okay, you have the source code, you want to compile for Intel, you want to compile for ARM, you want to compile for whatever other architecture. And it's the same thing because at the end of the day, you just want to provide resources.
But
And
then there's always the temptation of like something like Terraform, where the theory with Terraform is like, oh, if
that's
you learn
probably the
Terraform,
opposite side.
then it'll work on all of them. Like, no, no, it's going to be a classic. Maybe it will, but I don't believe it. I believe it'll turn into a classic. Now you have two problems problem because now you need to understand all the
Exactly.
specifics of the different cloud providers, and now you also get to understand the abstraction layer on top. And I feel like it's important to spot those situations, and the sort of more time you spend as an engineer, the more you start to realize like I don't want to have two problems. I just want to like learn the thing at the bottom. And if there's lots of things at the bottom that I could choose, like, oh, do I use Ubuntu? Do I use Red Hat? Do I like just choose one and never look back because they're kind of equivalent and they're not significantly different. And you're just wasting time if you know like Python and Ruby. It's like, they
Yeah.
fill the same niche like pretty much. Like just learn one and focus on that. Yeah,
Oh,
but I,
by the
I want to
way,
hear more about your specific. I mean, it seems like there's two things that you're talking about that are tricky. One is how do you secure a VPS so that
yeah,
you actually feel good about it being secured? And then this other topic of, hey, I want to run a million services on maybe a public host or maybe a private host, but I don't want to remember like a million port numbers, and I want to have things like TLS. How do you set it up? So
yeah. Okay.
I'll tell you, I'll tell you what I've done with my home net, right? And which is not like a public service. But then you can tell me what you've decided are, the maybe the constraints you want to follow for how you're securing your service. So I have a laptop under my desk, or not a laptop, a ML workstation under my desk. It
Yeah.
runs Sparky and like lots of other services. Probably like at this point, like a half dozen different like web apps and other services. Um, and uh, generally, they're not tightly secured within the local subnet. So if some uh, godforsaken IoT device gets like taken over and starts exploring the subnet, that they'll find a relatively soft surface there. Um, but it is exposed to the public internet through an SSH port. That's it. One SSH port that's like forwarded from my router, and uh, I have no password authentication on that. Um, sometimes I've had password auth onto it, but I never really use password auth. I use public private keys everywhere. I noticed that every time, and I have fail to ban running.
That's one of the basic rule if you want to open SSH and never ever
Yeah,
enable.
it's funny because if you look at your security logs with password auth, you can see every few minutes people are trying to hack into it. Like if you put a weak password on an SSH port on the internet, your machine will be compromised
Guarantee to get hacked. Guarantee.
within 5 minutes. Like you don't have time to make tea. Like literally. If
Exactly,
you put a weak
exactly,
password
exactly.
and then go to the kitchen to make tea, by the time you come back, some Russian teenager or some Chinese teenager like owns your system. Um, so yeah, just don't. But I feel safe with that. I've been running it that way for a long time. If I wanted to, if I were setting it up now, I probably wouldn't have figured out all the port forwarding. I probably just would have used Tailscale and trusted that they're doing the auth right. That's me. What about you?
Uh, okay. Usually, I will never ever have public machine on. If I'm gonna have public machine on, I assume always that they are compromised. So anything I'm gonna do in a public machine to me is assumption to be okay. This is compromised. So anything I'm gonna do there, never ever put any one of my important like tokens or things like that. Anything
Yeah,
that
I've got I've got everything on my machine, so I should have. I'm
don't
definitely
say
running
this.
differently.
You
Yeah.
record it. Don't say this.
Okay. Okay. Well.
By the way, I would have put a little bit of a firewall in front of your like home stuff.
Well, what firewall can I do? I need to be able to access it remotely. So
Okay,
like one
we'll
way or the
discuss about
other.
this in private. So.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's okay. But hey, I will tell you about like what I was doing today. Today was a
Okay.
kind of particular. It was not really an exposed machine into the public. It was a machine that need to be online
Hmm.
and do not need to have any port open for any reason, since a little bit of management stuff when I need it, and all the time should be just on and be able to access the internet, like classical, I don't know, like a scraping stuff or something like that. That you want only this thing to get things out, but
Okay.
you don't want to have anything to come in. Okay. It's a
Okay.
classic for any long running job, any kind of thing that need to do something on the web. But a lot of people have this is a kind of basic requirement, I think. Anytime you want to have a service that runs for a while, that maybe, you know, scraping stuff, maybe looking at valid source of information with a given amount of time. And when you collect the stuff, you're gonna just simply like a push the result into another thing. So it do not once it's started, it do not need to be.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want no ingress, except occasionally you need to be able to, go to some management panel to do some admin on it. But besides that, okay, but again, I'd
Yeah,
say,
but
how is
you
that?
need to
All
create the
right.
service and to make it work. So for a while,
Yeah.
and maybe make some like assistance, like of course auto updates, stuff like that for like, you know, everything it's exposed. We know kind of like on a maybe daily or weekly
I
basis.
mean, I can tell you what I would do. I can tell you what I do, but then I want to hear what you do. I'll tell you what I do because it's really short. I would say, uh, no password, SSH, and failban is good
Uh,
enough for security. So that is an ingress. It's SSH, but if SSH, is compromised with a 0 day that happens so fast that there's no time to patch it, you're screwed. But yeah, and then I'd say, besides that, unattended updates and run Debian stable. Don't be cute. Don't
that's a
get
good
weird.
option. Not a good
That's
option.
it. Like I would expect that if I did that and just like left it running, it would still be running in a year and it would not have been compromised. That's me. So tell me,
Yeah.
but obviously you could do something different, but you're still going to need some way to get into it. And any way you could get into it is going to have some, way it could be hacked.
Okay. There's different like approaches. One
Hmm.
like kind of approach that I saw even being done by a number of different cloud provider. When you have your cloud terminal, stuff like that, they're using the idea of the bastion host. The idea of the bastion host is say, okay, you open the SSH in your machine, okay, but the SSH in your machine can accept connection only from a given on a specific machine IP, assuming that is a static IP. You got like this little machine that can control your remote instance, and only this one is the it can accept incoming connection only from that specific machine. That's called the bastion host. And of course, you're moving the problem into the bastion host, but the difference is that you shut it down, the bastion host, when you don't need it. So you reduce the amount of time you sort of like risk getting your system exposed, and you're using maybe your bastion host when you're doing. Of course, this is really, really one-on-one simple stuff. You're gonna be very there's a way more interesting stuff and more secure stuff you can do if you're the professional. So you're creating like VPN and only an accepting connection when you're inside your VPN and stuff like that. This is of course an interesting stuff. Even like a simple homemade VPN is something that I will totally suggest for you to do too. That is like a way to a little bit reduce at least the amount of like outlog entries in your exposed machine. That is classic stuff. Of course, another, I'm talking about this kind of thing and I'm really scratching the surface and I'm not really a professional in this kind of thing. But the point is that you need to know so much stuff. And anybody that is doing this job need to know all these so much stuff. So the real question that I have is why we don't raise the level of abstraction. We always want to be at the
Well,
machine
that's
level.
what services are for, right? In theory, that's what Vercel does for you. That's what maybe Cloudflare claims they do for you with like durable objects or some other kind of higher level hosting function.
Yeah, the cloud function stuff, but they're really moving the idea into a different way. It's a just say, okay, you're super professional, just create a setup and use this convention so that everywhere when you have this is kind of starting to kind of need. And this is like a thing that I never really see any other cloud provider doing something like that. They always want to make a burden of understanding and configuration and magic number.
Yeah, I guess it's because the kind of the part of the market that will pay for services is the part that needs the complexity. So there's not actually a large market for kind of turnkey, custom application hosting, but with like turnkey infrastructure. I mean, people have
I'm not
tried.
really sure about
But wait,
this.
let me understand your Bastion host thing again. So you have the like actual server, and then that's the thing you want to secure. So it
Yeah.
will only accept SSH from particular IP addresses. So you've got kind
See,
of
this is simple translation, but it's something.
source IP level filtering in addition to
Exactly.
SSH public private key filtering. And then, of course, that just defers the problem to what happens when someone gets into the Bastion host. But the Bastion host, your security solution to that is you just turn it off when you're not using it.
Really, again, this is really basic one
And but then
stuff.
the question is like, okay, so now you have to worry about the hacker turning it on, turning it off. But the reason you suppose they can't do that is because the way you um, turn on or off the Bastion host is by accessing the cloud service provider's control panel. Is that
You
the gist of it?
usually a lot of very famous provider at this idea. They give you like a disposable instances that can act as a bastion host when you turn that on, maybe from the
Right,
UI.
right. But I'm trying to understand
So
the
that's the
security boundary. So it seems like all right, first of all, you've added more layers of defense, which slows people down somewhat. But the new layer you've added, which you are supposing is more secure than an SSH port, is access to the cloud provider's control panel. Because as soon as someone can do that, they can turn on the Bastion host,
of course.
use console to
You're
access it.
delegating the
And
security to the being able to access your control panel stuff. That is, of
okay.
course, in order to kind
So
of.
I would say if I were like thinking about this from scratch and didn't already have a setup, that I don't trust the cloud provider's control panel to be um, more securely authenticated than Tailscale. So if I wanted to
Uh,
go for like a third party thing, I'd
I,
probably just go for
I remember Tailscale is slightly different thing because Tailscale is like a not opening ports. You just relying on outside connection. You got two outside connection pointing the same thing, and so you don't have to open a port because you just exiting and requesting the port to be opened from the inside, not you open. It's
that's
like
right.
instead of knocking
That's
the
right.
door,
So
open the
with
door when you
Tailscale,
know
I'm
when
not
you're gonna
gonna
go.
so with Tailscale, I would achieve your goal, or maybe it's one of your design goals of not having an open SSH port.
Yeah.
Um, there would still be a security boundary based on uh, someone's ability to authenticate with Tailscale to enter the tailnet, but I think that's probably like as secure as the security boundary of someone being able to log into your provider account. That would be my guess.
It
In
is,
any
you
event, the
know,
Tailscale stuff's open source. It's all built on like WireGuard and whatnot. So I think you could, like, if I wanted to, also if you're really, I mean, if you're like trying to defend against some advanced persistent threat or phishing attack,
it's just like discussing like a public best practices. I think that those are
yeah,
like the basic all the time. That like just coming back to the original discussion is that why should we really need to remember all these detail all the time? While a good way to do it, there are like a three, four different good way to do it. You should just choose like do A
yeah.
or C, and
Honestly,
all
I
the
think a lot
nitty
of this
gritty
stuff
should be
is.
in place for you. And I really don't understand why we need all this.
I think there's three kinds of difficulty here. Here's my last thought on it. The first kind of difficulty is there's so many ways to do it that if you're unfamiliar with the domain, it's hard to figure out what a sensible way is, right? Because it's just a very confusing set of technologies. And in Linux, you have all this old stuff, the new stuff. Should I use the old stuff? What's good? What's bad? Um, and also, if like you're completely technically naive, you don't even know what the threat vectors are. It hasn't even occurred to you that, oh, wait, I need to
Yeah.
get certificates in order to have TLS or whatever. But if you're reasonably so that's the hard part. Like if you're coming from zero, it is a hard space to understand, and there's a lot to choose from. Um, that's like step one. But then let's say you get past that, then all right, now you realize that what you want is you want to have like a sensible set of solutions that are going to be good for the next 5 years for all the typical problems. And I think those
Yeah.
exist
It's
now.
like
I think those
when you
exist
don't
now.
need
So
something too fancy, just like the
yeah,
basics.
like only open SSH. No passwords, fail to ban. I do think use Debian. I think that solves the problem for like single access, but it doesn't solve other problems that I still don't have solutions to. Like I want to run a bunch of web
Debian
services from.
itself is the basic images always come with a bunch of services like pre-installed, pre-thing, and you don't want to just open ports it in that way. If you really want to be very, very narrow for both a security and a performance point of view, what is the point of having a lot of services running on your machine when you just need to have it?
Debian does not start with a lot of services.
Yeah,
If you
it's just like, and I don't know. And moreover, you're making your machine secure today when you set it up, but maybe tomorrow something happened. And maybe there's a 0 day, you have no idea it's going to happen. So you want to, if you really want to sleep within like a public machine, it's a difficult thing.
I
And
don't think so. If it's only an SSH port, that's the only thing you have to worry about. Like how else is it going to get hacked? I'm running
okay,
SSH and I'm
auto
running
updates, simply,
and I'm
simply.
running unintended updates. So unintended updates could be compromised, and there could automatically be installed an update that compromises the system, or SSH could be
This is pretty
compromised.
common stuff to happening, and we really risk the doomsday.
No, it's not happening with unintended updates. It's
Oh
happening
yeah.
in Clown World. It's happening in Clown World with NPM. It's not happening in Debian World with apt-get.
Wait. I don't remember the name for the zlib hack. You hear about like at the beginning of the year there was the zlib hack. We really have we were so lucky. We find that 0 day before it get public. Just literally the story about the zlib hack. That there's someone try work into the zlib for like a 2 years. This is what I read about. Like
I mean,
a
those guys are
guy
on
worked there
salary,
for
right?
two
Like
years. After two
it's
years, he injected look at this like a
someone in an office
poison
park,
payload on a
somewhere in
test.
China or Russia. This is their day job. They show up and their performance review
And
is like,
it's just
"Hey, have you
like,
managed to get a 0 day into Debian?"
but
That would be like, "Hey, he's sitting around after work, like talking with his buddy, having a beer, hoping that like that, he manages to like get his 0 day on his perf chart."
this is happening because like SSH, everyone is relying on that protocol and everyone is trying to hack it because it's the protocol to hack. But my point is that I don't see really great connection between to say, okay, you should know all the nitty gritty of SSH should be secure. This is not true. It's two different things. I should say I want a machine with this property and just really update yourself and keep it secure by your own and have someone really better than me that can say, oh, your machine is going to be possible compromise stuff. And the auto update thing, it's not something that is enough here because there's a too many different
I think, yeah,
content.
I guess I honestly think that you're exaggerating the risk if all you're doing is opening an SSH port and you're automatically applying security
Yeah, no,
updates. In that
no,
case,
I
I think you're
absolutely
fine.
not exaggerating, Rick, trust me.
But I do
You said before,
think that
the
the
moment
risk
you expose an IP with a 22 open, you're gonna see logs on your app log. And
that can't be avoided. The moment you expose any kind of ingress,
yeah,
people are going to be
just
attacking.
avoid exposing
So
that port. Just maybe even closing that port in your firewall when you don't need it. So one thing that I don't agree with you with before is that the idea of Bastion host is just a way to reduce the amount of noise coming in because noise is going to be hiding some important stuff. So in that attempt, it's, oh, it's always an attempt. It's like a crying at the wolf. Oh, it's just crying at the wolf. Maybe one of those was a real good one. That's a kind of like thing that I usually try to reduce the noise. I don't want to have noise. Just separate it.
all that's
Far
happening now is you don't
away.
see the noise, right? Because now
No, with
people
the
are
Bastion
sitting there.
host, you don't see the noise. You're going to see the noise in the Bastion host, but the Bastion is going to be shut off. You're going to be shut
No,
down.
but you don't see the noise. The noise is now coming where people are trying to take over your cloud account in order to be able to turn on your Bastion host. You don't
We
even
don't
have
know. We have no
you don't
idea how
even
many
have the
people are trying
logs.
to
You don't
hack
even
our
have the
cloud account
logs
because
that
we do
show
not have a log
you
about that.
GCP. Yeah, so like you haven't solved the problem. You're just making it invisible to yourself. People, if someone's trying to hack you, they're now trying to take over your GCP account or your AWS account in order to turn on your Bastion host, in order to get into your resources.
I
And
know, but this is something that will happen anyway. So I'm just trying to say, okay, I'm delegating to very professional who I pay for with the cloud account to keep themselves secure. And I try to use
I'm
the
delegating to the SSH maintainers and to the Debian apps repo maintainers.
oh, yes. The only
We're all delegating here. Like
that
no
you can
one's
have
building this
a
stuff from
bigger
scratch.
outlog file with a lot of noise inside. And
So I have more information. You have less information. Like those logs exist, which show people trying to attack GCP consoles, right? That
but
someone's job in Google is to sit there and look at those and make sure the GCP console can't get owned.
we try to trust them. We're going to pay them for being trustable. But, it's the other thing I want to say is that I think that there is a market today for people that wants just simple things set up and working with trying to sleep at the night. Because once upon a time, who was able to create a service was able to secure it. We need to learn everything because we were the professional. Today, there's like the vibe coding world, and in the vibe coding world, you started the discussion with that. You say, "Oh, it's really dangerous. It is dangerous. We should tell the people that it's dangerous having a machine exposed, even if you don't have like a stuff, that important stuff in that machine." Just maybe you open the machine, you leave like your working accounts over there, and someone just open that and just have access to your working accounts with your like
Well,
services and
this
stuff.
is this is the other thing I wanted to say. Like, so I feel like I know how to secure a host on the public internet. I've done it before. I'm doing it now. It's not that scary, but I don't think I know how to conveniently secure multiple different services with good isolation all running on the same host. So what I would like to be able to do is have
Oh, you multiple services, I will
is,
probably. Oh, by the
is
way, I'll
have
always use Docker or like any kind of container technology to execute services. No way I'm gonna run something in the machine for any reason. Security is one of those reasons, but like not only security, but
yeah. So I think the answer is either Docker or actual
Podman.
VMs. Yeah, or Podman
Yeah,
or
if you have resources,
Incas.
VM, but
I mean, VMs are actually more solid isolation boundaries than Docker. Um, but
sure.
but the part of it that I haven't figured out to my satisfaction is what is the setup that makes it super easy to administer. So if I want to create a new web app on a new public domain and host it on an existing VPS, so that it's just another thing on that VPS and it's isolated from other things on that VPS.
Yeah.
And setting it up takes less than 5 minutes. If it takes more than 5 minutes, the solution has failed. I don't really know what that is. Like I can do that right now on my local host in an unsecure way. It's all like catty settings.
Yeah,
But
exactly. You just have a reverse proxy with Caddy, with like, where's the other one? Forgot about it. Nginx, whatever. You get a reverse proxy. You just set a container technology, what is Docker, what is Podman, whatever it is, and you just simply map those
yeah, okay, but everything you said there right now takes
public.
more than 5 minutes because the
Yeah,
connect
once you set the things up, this is kind of doable. I never look at this, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of services that can do a lot of
Yeah,
open
no,
source
I think
projects.
there's stuff for it now, and I think there's some integration of systemd with I think it's called
Yeah.
Incas, which is the virtual machine runner on Debian,
Yep.
and so I think there's probably a very simple setup, which is like Caddy plus Incas plus systemd that makes this like extremely easy. But I've never had occasion to set it up, so I haven't done yet. But it's on the horizon. And the thing that the guy, just to loop this back to the beginning, the thing that the thread I ran into on Twitter was talking about was, hey, how do I deal with all these different port services on on my device? And that's solved now with Caddy, right? You just set up Caddy as a reverse proxy, so you can map subdomains on your local net to every different port number. And I do it with MDMS, and then I also started just doing it with top level DNS zone records that map into private IPs, and that all works. So life's good, but yeah, it's not a solved problem completely for me with like
Yeah.
virtual machine level containment.
I think that this is the way I would do probably the same way, like caddy, whatever, reverse proxy in front, and having this mapping to a containerized version of the.
I'll tell you what, if I figure out something that works, we can talk about it next time. But I think we're way
Yeah,
past 15 minutes again, so we should probably wrap up.
like, yeah, remember when we started, like, it was 2018, 2019, there was so less thing to think about. Like, it was
That's the other
okay.
thing. All this is
Oh,
so
can I
much
use a
easier now
cloud
because
provider with GPU?
yeah,
Just like set up standard stuff.
it's like a full day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the other big tip, and this is one I was talking with Steve Derrico about this a week ago at a meetup. Uh, good OG guy from the iOS world. one of the best things I ever did was buying my own Linux machine, with my own GPUs, and then setting it up in my own house so it's always running and never putting a GUI on it, never connecting it to a monitor, right?
This is
Because
like any
right,
old OG, old school deep
right.
learning protection
But the
practitioner
reason for
always
this,
know that
the
that's the
reason
way.
for this is that, before I did this, anytime I had to administer a Linux machine, like a production server, I'd like SSH into it. Then it was always like, where the hell do I find the configuration to like, do this? Or what's the name of the
Exactly.
goddamn package that handles like, DNS or handles like just hosting a file or handles rotating passwords or users. But if you set up your own machine with no GUI, then you are obliged to learn all the command line way of operating the machine because it's the only way of operating the machine. And if it's since it's your own machine, you use it for normal stuff, that just becomes like your day-to-day skills. So then when it comes time to actually serve production machines and build like production infrastructure, you're not learning this new set of skills that's only relevant in production. You're using the exact same skills that you like use for your everyday machine. And that is like night and day because if you don't do that, then what happens is you spend your like workday on Mac OS and you know everything about where it is in like, settings. But then when you're doing production work on Linux, now it's like a whole new universe. And you're like, well, what's the settings version of this on the command line? But if you
You
just
should
live on the
be
command
the
line, then like,
SSH and port mapping. That's the basic of working. You should
yeah,
never assume you can work your local machine. You should always assume your machine is far away. So you
yeah.
set yourself up to be able to work with whatever size a cloud computer. And I really think that those basic ideas should be part of the understanding of the broader public. And in this moment, I really feel that there is
That's a lot to ask from people.
no, it's only a problem of like the way we package this kind of stuff. We pack in such way that there's a kind of a lot of to understand before starting being productive. A lot of configure, a lot of really risky mistakes you can make. So the idea of having good defaults, I don't know. I never get into like
I don't know.
pre-build.
I think defining good defaults in a good package is as hard a problem as building the core technology. But it's not one that has enough of a market on it. Anyway, we should get going.
Yeah, we totally missed even this timeline.
All
Another
right.
minutes.
It's good to see
Okay,
you. And I got to publish those old recordings
I
we
got a
have,
big
so we'll have
rant
a bunch
today,
coming
so
out.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.